What's up, everyone? We got another NFL offseason recap video. Today, we're going to be looking at the Minnesota Vikings, how their season went last year, what they've done so far in free agency, and what they should be looking for in the draft. Now, the Vikings had a solid season, finishing 10-6 and upsetting the Saints in the wild card round of the playoffs. They did finish 2-4 in their division, but some of them can be just attributed to off games, while they played really good in other games as well. They were led by Dalvin Cook, who had a great season at running back. Even though he got hurt towards the end of the season, he was still one of the best running backs in the league when healthy. Kirk Cousins had another solid year, despite losing Adam Thielen to an extended injury this year. Stephon Diggs had another solid year, and it was just the emergence of Dalvin Cook that really spurred the offense. And Kevin Stefanski's use of two tight end sets with guys like Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph. As a result, the Vikings offense finished 10th in offensive DVOA. Now, the defense was better than the offense, in my opinion. They were led by a great linebacking group with Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, as well as two stout defensive ends in Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter. Their secondary had two really good safeties in Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith, but man, did they have some really bad corners. Xavier Rhodes took another step backwards this year, and which led to his release. Trey Waynes was underwhelming. Mackenzie Alexander got hurt. Mike Hughes was getting hurt a lot. Just an all-around bad performance by the Vikings corners, who just couldn't stay healthy or perform. Despite that, they did finish with the 7th best defensive DVOA. The Vikings made some big moves before free agency started. One was declining Everson Griffin's team option. He's 32 now, which means he's on the decline of his career, but he's still had some productive pass rushing games and seasons when he's fully healthy. But obviously, they entered free agency with having negative cap space, meaning they needed to make big decisions like this, like cutting Everson Griffin, just declining his option in general. Releasing Xavier Rhodes, who's been their corner for about 7 years now. This was expected, as the last 2 years he's taken 2 to 3 major steps back from his all-pro season in 2017. He just hasn't been the same corner for Mike Zimmer, and he can't be trusted in man-to-man coverage, just getting consistently beat over top and over the middle. The release nose tackle, D-tackle Linval Joseph, just to free up more cap space as his contract was pretty hefty. And they released backup tight end David Morgan. Like I said before, the Vikings entered free agency with negative cap space and the least amount of cap space of any team in the NFL, so they needed to get creative with their moves. They released a bunch of players to free up cap space, which I think was smart. Franchise tagging Anthony Harris was their smartest move they've made all offseason. This is a guy that's been, for the past 2 years, one of the best free safeties in the NFL. He's tied for the league lead in interceptions this year. And PFF actually has him graded as the highest free safety out of any safety that they've graded this year. So I think it's a smart move that they franchise tagged him. They could work out a long-term deal this offseason, but just making sure he's still on the team is important. Signing Michael Pierce to a 3-year, $27 million contract. This is more of a run stuffer to replace the Linval Joseph. From Baltimore, he did really well. He graded out pretty well in the run department, but in the pass department, he's not really a pocket pusher. So I think they got him for a good deal. $9 million per year is a solid value for him. And just finding a player to replace Linval Joseph this quick is important for the Vikings, who lost a good player in Everson Griffin along their D-line. Now, before free agency started, Kirk Cousins was only signed on for this upcoming year, but now they've extended him for 2 years worth $66 million, which means they're going to be their quarterback for the next at least 3 years. A good move. This is a guy that's had a solid career in Minnesota for the past 2 years. It might be because of the system or that he's had two dynamic receivers, but Kirk Cousins has proved his worth ever since he's come to Minnesota. Vikings also signed Dan Bailey to a 3-year, $10 million contract. After having a rough preseason, he was a cut candidate, but he turned it around and had a really good season this year with the Vikings. Then, with the limited cap space, the Vikings made as many death moves as they could. One of the main ones would be like Tajay Sharp to kind of replace the departed Stephon Diggs, possibly. And it's possible that he earns a starting role come off-season training camp, but he's more likely to just be another body on their depth chart, possibly like a special teams guy as well. Now, the biggest move in terms of who the Vikings let go was this Stephon Diggs trade. So the Vikings traded Diggs and a 7th-round pick to the Bills for a 2020 first-round pick, 2020 5th-round pick, 2020 6th-round pick, and 2021 4th-round pick. Now, on the plus side, they got a first-round pick. right? DeAndre Hopkins got traded for basically nothing, like a second round pick and David Johnson. And the fact that the Vikings were able to get a first round pick is just great. They have two first round picks now, both in the mid 20s, but it's still solid. Now, as for the trade itself, Diggs is a dynamic receiver. There's no doubt. He's a top 20 receiver easily, one of the better route runners, one of the more explosive playmakers on the field when he has the ball. He'll always be known for the Minnesota Miracle against the Saints, but this is just a guy that I guess he wasn't the character guy he was looking for. He obviously wanted out of Minnesota, and I think it was time for him to be traded. And the Bills, obviously, I think they won this trade because of how dynamic Diggs is. But for the Vikings to get a first round pick back is really important for them. The Vikings also had a lot of other players that left in free agency. Receiver Laquan Treadwell, perennial bust ever since he got drafted in the first round. He went to the Falcons. Defensive end Stephen Weatherly went to the Panthers. Linval Joseph went to the Chargers. Again, I said they replaced him with Michael Pierce. Then they had a bunch of secondary guys leave. Trey Waynes went to the Bengals. Mackenzie Alexander went to the Bengals. Xavier Rhodes went to the Colts. Andrew Sendejo, who I hope the Vikings would have brought back because he's one of their guys that's been there for a long time and can play either safety position or nickel corner. He went to the Browns. And Jaron Kearse, who filled in for Harrison Smith at times, he went to the Lions. So a lot of secondary pieces that they need to replace. There's still some in free agency left, but they should also look to the draft, which we're getting to next. Now, as for the draft, the Vikings have two first-round picks, and I think you have to go receiver corner or corner receiver, whichever the Vikings choose. Now, there's some very solid first-round talents in the mid-20s. I'm hoping the Vikings can get someone like T. Higgins, a big-bodied receiver that has a huge catch radius for Kirk Cousins to throw it up to. Be a great red zone target, and solid route runner as well. Not the greatest speed, runs about a 4.54, but that's not really his forte. It's more for catch radius, jump balls. They could also get someone like Denzel Mims, who's quick, and he's about 6'2". It might be a reach for him to go pick him at pick 23, but the Vikings do have the ability to select him there. And Justin Jefferson, another guy. He's more of a slot receiver, and they already have Thielen, so I don't think Jefferson would be their best choice. But again, Jefferson is a great talent, a first-round talent, and the Vikings can take him at 23. At 26, they should go for someone like Trayvon Diggs, Christian Fulton, and C.J. Henderson. Maybe someone like Jeff Gladney from TCU would also work out fine for them, but they need to go corner receiver in the first round. Like, that's a must. Improving their offensive line. There were times where their offensive line was struggling, and they had a bunch of rookies last year as well as some vets, but their vets were kind of washed up. So getting some more offensive line pieces in the second and third round. They have a lot of draft capital now, thanks to the Bills, so they shouldn't be afraid to trade up and get their guy. And adding to their D-line, who was hit hard by the departures of Everson Griffin, Stephen Weatherly, and Linval Joseph, they should just look to add more bodies up front and improve their depth chart. That is all for this offseason recap video of the Minnesota Vikings. Don't forget to like, comment what do you think the Vikings record will be in 2020, and who you think they should take in the draft, and subscribe.